This time on Knot Rod, we bring back the Nova and find out just what it can do with 410 gears. So just as a little refresher, this is the 1972 Chevy Nova that I bought for $1,800 in our very first episode of Knot Rod. When I got it, it had no engine, no transmission, no driveline. It was a roller, but that was about it. I took the 350 and the 3-speed manual transmission that came out of my 72 C10 pickup, put those in this car and got it running pretty good. And then in episode 2, I ran down the track and ran a 1501 with the 273:1 rear end ratio that it had when I got the car. Then in episode 6, we swapped in a different rear end with a 410 gear set, but the spring purchase on that rear end was actually set up for a multi-leaf, not a mono-leaf, so we had to make some crazy little adapters just out of stuff we had laying around to even get that axle into the car. Finally did that, and then when we got the car out on the road finally, it was a complete failure because we found that the eyelet on the front end of the driver's side leaf spring was broken in half. And at that point it was too late to even get it to the drag strip, so we were just kind of hosed. So now the plan is to go back through and fix the stuff that screwed us on the last episode. I got a brand new set of leaf springs for it. I got an install kit for it, so we can just cut all the bolts and everything off the mounts. We can get rid of the shackles, whatever we need to do to get the old stuff out, and then put the new stuff in. Then while we're changing the springs, we're already gonna have the rear end and everything out of it anyway, so we're gonna put a driveline loop in it. And also while we're at it, I got some subframe connectors because the subframe connectors mount to the leaf spring bolts that mount up into the car. So that stuff should all be pretty easy to do while we're already moving everything out. And probably the thing I'm the most excited about is that I got a new set of headers for it that are actually designed for this car. And so now, finally, the headers won't be dragging on the ground everywhere I go. Okay, so I'm just going to get as many of these bolts to come out as I can, and whichever ones won't come out are going to get cut. And that's probably the first one that's going to get cut. Okay, so every one of those has to get cut. Yeah, thanks, Chevy. Thanks a lot. Yes, I got one. One of the bolts actually came out. Okay, so 2 out of 6 bolts came out. Alright, so I think the first priority here is just going to be to get the axle out. Because then once the springs and the axle is out of the way, then it'll be a lot easier to get these bolts out. And the easiest way to get the springs out, I think, is just going to be to cut the bolts right through here, and then everything should just slide out. And then these other bolts over here have to come out because that's where the subframe connector connects. So let's get chopping. You know, I once had a friend that said, if we can't fix it, we'll f it up so bad nobody else can. And that might be what happens here today. There we go, finally through one freaking side. Now we can get this other side. Bam! And there it is. Okay, so the front of the springs are detached. Now get the backs of them where they go into the shackles. Now we can drop this sucker out. So if you want to get a little bit more leverage out of your wrench, you can take the box end, put that on your nut, and then you take this end, put it on that wrench from another wrench, and that'll give you more leverage. But you still got to be careful, because if you're reefing on it real hard, this can spin like that sometimes, and you can smack your hands on stuff. So just be careful of that when you're doing that trick. You want to pull the jack out of here? Just pull it out from underneath there.
Yeah!
There it is. Springs and all.
Yeah, that's not right.
Oh no, that's factory. That's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
All right, slap a new set of springs on her. Now, unlike the factory, when we put all this stuff back together, we are going to anti-sleaze all of the bolts. And even though we probably won't be the ones actually taking this back apart many, many decades from now, but the guy that does will really thank us for having done this. It's kind of like when you cover your mouth when you cough. It's not going to prevent you from getting sick, but it's being courteous to others. And this is pretty much exactly the same thing. So by anti-sleazing all these bolts, we are making the world a better place. Kind of cut into it a little bit, but I don't think we sacrificed the integrity of it at all. All right, so now we just got one bolt to go cut on the other side, and then both of those are out, and then we can start putting the new stuff in, which is pretty cool. This is what the spring perches actually bolt to, is up into these clips. So now that we got the spring perches out of the way, we can remove all these clips and put new ones in. Okay, so now on to the new parts section of the episode. We call that Act 2. Act 3 is burnouts.
Yeah, unfortunately I can't go straight to Act 3.
I don't think there actually is a torque for these. I think they're just go as tight as you can, but I'm gonna look anyway. You never know.
Torque spec. Tight as you can!
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can lock it in like this, kind of.
Maybe. Let's get the gas tank kind of like right in here. And then we can slide it forward once it's in place. Yeah, there. I think it'll go.
Oh yeah, that's the ticket.
There we go. And I can kind of pull it from over here, maybe. Now
I think you just
forward a little bit.
There we go.
Okay, I think it's kind of in place. It just needs to be shoved forward.
This thing's gonna be all shackled up in the back, you know. It's gonna look super 70s till those springs settle.
Yeah, it's gonna be super sweet. So since we had to pull the spring perches off and everything, this will be a perfect time to install a set of subframe connectors. So this is what happens when you buy the cheap stuff. By their own design here, this gusset right here prevents this bolt from going all the way up into that hole that it's supposed to go into because of this washer here. So we're gonna have to notch this. There's a little bit of play in the shackles so we can get the spring in. Uh-oh. Yeah. Boy, that doesn't seem right, does it? So I ran into a little bit of a problem when I was trying to put the shackles on. Since the new multi-leaf is 2.5 inches wide and the old springs were 2 3/4 inches wide, and the bushings that came with the new shackles were made for the wider old springs. So after a whole bunch of trial and error with 3 different sets of bushings and 2 different sets of shackles, I was finally able to get a combination together that would work. So now the axle is finally hung from front to back. We've also got the subframe connectors in, but I still got to do the brake line, the drive line, put a driveline loop in it, still got to do the headers, but it's super late and I'm super grungy, so I'm gonna pack it in for the night. Okay, so since we had to pull the axle back out, this was another prime opportunity to add another piece, just like we did with the subframe connectors. We're going to put a driveline loop in it because the driveline was already disconnected from the rear end, so we'll just slip it right on there. And then these two bolt holes right here actually connect to the transmission bolts that go into the cross member. Hopefully this 1/4 inch thick piece isn't going to be too thick for it, because when we first put all that together, it was really tight in there. The transmission was coming up and trying to hit the tunnel, so I'm hoping that that's not an issue trying to squeeze this in there. Bring this up here just to get the driveline in line so I'm not having to hold it up when I go to put the driveline loop in. Okay, that shouldn't go anywhere. Cool. Cool. Now, drop the tranny down. Okay, cool. One driveline loop installed. Okay, so as per usual, I just got the cheapest set of shocks I could possibly find for this thing. So here they go. Once these go in, the whole rear of this thing's all done. Oh, okay. It's like Christmas. I just want to like get in there and get a sneak a peek at these things.
Oh, they look shiny. These look like they might be too nice for the Nova.
I know. Kind of worried about that, actually. I mean, what kind of show are we trying to run here? Nice parts.
Yeah.
Curious to see what kind of crazy bend they got going on over here on the driver's side.
Yeah, that one tucks around for the steering box.
It probably looks, yeah, it looks just about like the one you made.
Except way better looking.
Except, yeah, way nicer. Doesn't have a bunch of scabby ass welds all over it. But this is what I'm most excited about, is that they're not like that. Okay, we got the headers installed, so that's all done. We're gonna have to put some shorty spark plugs in it for these headers. Strange how the other headers worked fine with the stock plugs, but get that done and then I think it's ready to drive. All right, so we got the car loaded up and everything for the part you guys have been really waiting to see. And now we're gonna head to the racetrack. I think right now would be a good opportunity to take bets on what the thing is gonna run with the new gears. What do you think?
So I'm thinking 14.2. Kind of playing it safe, maybe.
It's funny because that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Was it?
Yeah, so you take 14.2 and then I'll have to take the under or over. Last time the car ran 15.01. I'm gonna take the over. I think it's gonna be slower than 14.2.
You think so?
I really would like to break into the 13s, but
I think if it runs really, really good, we could see a 13.9, but
we'll see. It's not that great of a running engine.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the other thing is too, now in theory, if the engine has the same amount of horsepower and the car is the same weight as it was before, the top speed that it runs in the 1/4 mile should be the same. That's just a factor of distance and then power and weight. But with the old gears that this thing had, the engine was really never in its power band. So my thought on that is, since it really was never sitting at maximum power for that much time during its run, I think it is going to go faster than it did. Last time the car went 96.13 miles per hour.
Yeah, will we see 100 miles an hour?
I think I'm going to say 101, and then are you going to take the under or over?
I'm going to go 100.
100. Okay, so you're taking the under. All right, let's go. So this is one of the first test and tunes of the year, so it is a huge line getting through here. So far though, I don't see anything here except for maybe that GMC Sierra in front of us that the Nova could beat. but we'll see how that goes. Unless, of course, the other driver really screws up.
Oh yeah, all good.
So let me grab my helmet and I'll run over to tech inspection. So we've been sitting in the staging lanes for hours here, and they're finally letting us go because they got a bunch of different events going on today. So test and tune's kind of getting saved to the last thing. So we might only get one run in here, so got to really make it count. I'm probably only going to launch at like 3,000 or 4,000 RPM, somewhere in there. That's what I did last time, and with these brand new gears in the back, I don't want to hit them too hard. You're not required to run a helmet until you break into the 13s, which we don't think we will, but just in case, I'm going to wear one anyway. Well, it certainly wasn't the 13s, but our guesses were pretty damn close.
Yeah?
So you said 14.2.
Yeah.
And I took the over on that, so I guess I win that one.
You got that one.
But then I said 101 miles an hour, and he took the under on that one, so you actually win that one.
I bet you a little tune in, a little tweak, and it could probably bring it down even more.
Yeah, it launched pretty good. I wish.
It looked like it did all right.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to tune on it, but I think that's going to be it, especially since
4 hours. 4 hours for one pass.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since the headlights don't work.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, that's kind of a problem.
That's going to be kind of a problem when it gets this dark out.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it looked pretty good though.
Yeah, it launched good. I was happy with the launch. I just thought that, you know, I thought we could have done a little bit better. But hey, I was wrong about the miles per hour thing. Apparently, it really is true what they say. The top speed that you run in the quarter mile is only affected by your horsepower and your weight, not the gearing. Apparently, even regardless of whether or not you're in the power band the whole time.
Yeah.
So, because it still ran 96.03, which was slightly slower than before, but around the same. Still 96 miles an hour.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah.
So, interesting.
Yeah. What was reaction time?
Reaction time was 0.335. Definitely an improvement. I think the next thing for this thing is probably going to be more motor.
Yeah, more motor. Yeah.
Anyway, it's dark. We're getting out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. To be honest, I was a little disappointed with the time. But here's the cool thing. If you take the mile per hour that we ran and run it through an ET calculator, we come pretty close to the time we actually ran, which means this number here is realistically about the fastest we could expect to run this car as currently configured. Now here's the not so cool thing. When we run either the ET or mile per hour number through an ET calculator, we come up with about 204 horsepower. So that means that this motor is pushing no more than 205 horsepower at the flywheel. Ugh. Which is honestly probably about right, considering that the bottom end is completely stock from a truck engine of the emissions era of the 1970s, which means this thing left the factory with dished pistons making about 8.5 to 1 compression. The aftermarket heads probably bumped that up slightly, but not by much, especially considering how worn out the cylinders are. Aside from that, the Muncie 3-speed, in my opinion, with 410 gears is genius. Not to be confused with a Saginaw 3-speed, of course. First gear is about the same ratio as a wide ratio Muncie 4-speed. They're arguably stronger than a Muncie 4-speed, it requires less wasted time shifting down the track, and the best part is, you can pick one up used in good shape for about $100. Is it as fun as shifting a 4-speed? Not by a long shot, but right now it's what we can afford. Anyone that's ever played a racing game knows that eventually you level up to a point where you just can't seem to win any more races until you do some big upgrades to the car. Well, we're still only at the beginning, but either way, the next place to go with this thing is going to inevitably be engine work. And when that happens, you won't want to miss it. Maybe someday we might actually win a race. And ultimately, isn't that what this is about? Chasing the dream of doing something special. Something I think I've said way too much in my life is, it's not ready yet. Well, you know what I've realized? If I kept saying that, I could always find another reason to not be ready. So what are you waiting for? Get out in the garage, build something cool, and go out and do something amazing. Those don't look like the right rubbers. Maybe that's why I got two.
Ow! Man, that thing just went sailing right through, huh?
Yeah, and broke a spark plug.
Oh, man. Something just go down the header hole?
This time on Knot Rod, we bring back the Nova and sit in the staging lanes for freaking ever. And I really didn't want to be disappointed not having the right rubbers. And then this goes through the hole here, I believe.